Perfect. Now, welcome and thanks to everyone who's joining today. People are still trickling in. And if you do miss anything from today, we'll be sharing the recording after today's session. So again, as I touched on, thank you and welcome for joining this panel discussion this afternoon. Earlier this year, towards the end of last year, the introduction of ChatGPT into the more day-to-day culture for AI was a bit of a game changer. We've got real changes coming up shortly with the introduction of Microsoft Copilot, and this will really start to see the impact of AI on businesses. There's been quite a lot of discussions around this and lots of opportunities and how AI can be used to improve efficiencies for businesses, for example, but also lots of worry. It's created lots of uncertainty, worry about job losses, and on the extreme end, people worried that we might end up in a sort of Skynet type environment from the Terminator films. But really, fundamentally, where we are is that there is a lack of understanding of how to use AI within businesses and its real impact on cybersecurity and privacy in a positive and negative way. So we brought the panel together today to help everyone navigate this and its impact and AI's impact on cybersecurity and data protection. There'll be a number of polls throughout today's panel discussions, and the aim of these is to really get some feedback from everyone who's joining us today and understand your knowledge of AI and security to help us shape future webinars that we might want to deliver. There's also a Q&A, so on your Zoom screen you can ask some questions in the Q&A box, and we will look to answer these at the end of today's webinar. So first of all, we'll introduce you our panel. Simon.
Hi there, my name's Simon Jeffries and I'm the Director of Technology at Sharp UK.
Tyron.
Good afternoon, name is Tyron Robenheimer and I'm Head of Cloud Technologies at Sharp IT Services.
Perfect, thank you. Lee.
Hello there, nice to talk to you all today. I'm a cybersecurity expert at ConnectWise, also sales engineer.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, and my name is Matt Riley. I'm the Director of Transformation Security here at Sharp UK, and a part of my specialism is around the data protection side as well. So first of all, we're going to kick off with our first poll. So that should appear on your screens very shortly. And it's a rating of 1 to 10, 10 being most concerned. But how concerned are you that AI will increase the likelihood of your business being compromised? So 10 being most concerned, 0 being least concerned. Give that a minute. Perfect. Thank you very much. Lovely. Okay then. So, the first question today, what are the current threats that the organizations are facing right now? And I'd quite like to start this one off in just to sort of highlight that there is a perception out there that actually it's large enterprises and big businesses that are the target of cyber threats, cyber attacks, etc. But actually, in practice, they do occur with these big businesses. But the SME industry, so typically where we all sit, is actually the most vulnerable. This is really down to much lower levels of security at the operational level within major businesses. A lot of big enterprises can afford high levels of technology, which the SME sectors just cannot do. So the perception very much does not match reality. So being aware of that as a starting place is really good to start with. And these threats are coming from a sort of 4 really areas of concern. Typically, you'll have your nation state actors. These are often sort of groups in Russia or North Korea. And their goal is really around disruption and misinformation. Whereas on the other hand, the organized criminal gangs, they are there for profit incentive. They are there effectively to make money and often run as businesses with things like call centers as a tool they use to try and trick people and trick businesses into giving up information. The next sort of threat comes from hacktivist collectives. Now, in practice, these aren't typically aiming at the SME sector. These are organizations that have some cause. whatever that might be. An example of that would be anonymous. And finally, then you have insider threats. So again, our teams maliciously, or more often than not maliciously, are potential threat vectors for each businesses. So again, we must make sure that we can look at the outside world, but we also have to look at our own internal world to see what threats might be coming from. Simon, what's your take on this as applied to that small, medium and size enterprise area?
Yes, well, thank you, Matt. So as you say, any business is at risk of it being attacked, and our clients are, and of course many businesses throughout the country are attacked every day. And it doesn't matter the size of your business. If a bad actor can look to leverage and compromise your infrastructure for their gain, financial gain, then they absolutely will. They don't care the size of you. They can get in and cause some damage or steal some data or change financial records. That's what they'll do. So we support 800 plus small to medium enterprises, and as I said, we do see these falling victim to attacks. And of course, that's not because we're not supporting them properly, but the common places that a bad actor will look to gain entry to an environment is most commonly through email, and has been for a long time. We use email day in, day out, and these these email threats are now much more realistic. And once someone's in these days, they don't make themselves known. They kind of sit inside your infrastructure, kind of evaluating what you do as a business, what data you've got. Can they get into other systems? Can they laterally move across your environment? And actually also who you're talking with outside other businesses, because then they can build up a bit of a plan, in a kind of a social plan of what you do individually and as an organization, and who you communicate with, so that they can then look to leverage other organizations. And of course, once they feel they've got what they need, then they will launch their attack. And that could be, as I said a minute ago, changing financial records, which we see an awful lot. So people's pay may go elsewhere, or people that pay bills, it might go off to malicious accounts, etc. And so that's the kind of real attack, not knowing they're in. So and with AI, those types of attacks become more automated, because an AI-driven malware could be launched that does all that work for the bad actors. So email's big way in. We've seen a lot more recently around QR codes, because I think we all use QR codes for lots of things now, and we're used to scanning them on our phones. But coming in through on email, lots of people feel they're safe, but actually this has all been linked many times to threats now, even in places like restaurants, where you have a QR code on the table. Does that really belong to the restaurant you're at, or does it go off to a malicious menu system that then takes your money, and obviously you get no food, which is a bad thing as well. But there's all sorts of clever ways that you don't kind of trigger for a bad actor to get in. And of course, this is only going to get kind of more. It's going to become more and more difficult to kind of monitor as AI evolves. It's making AI sound bad. It's not all bad, of course, but AI is going to really, I think, accelerate these types of attacks.
Brilliant, thanks, Simon. I think what you summarised there, what you said, is actually it's the human level that gets exploited in often by AI.
Yeah.
And what we've seen with our clients is it's much harder to hack through things like firewalls than it is to trick someone into giving their username and password.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean the clever ways or simple ways that people can be fooled, if you like, is not difficult, but that's what we have to watch out for.
Perfect, thank you. So this question I'm going to pose to you, Lee. What are the concerns around the use of AI in the workplace?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I mean, the biggest one is going to be, if we think about confidentiality, integrity, and availability, which is what we think about when we're thinking about cybersecurity. The biggest risk that AI poses in the workplace is the confidentiality of material, so the unintended loss of data, and specifically intellectual property damage. Now, a lot of companies are trying to balance the operational efficiencies of using AI versus the risk of accidentally exposing information you're not supposed to. The very premise of AI and how it works is it's gathering huge amounts of data and data sets. And in order it to do a good job, you have to feed it with new data. Now, the trouble comes when you start feeding with information you don't want getting leaked out to the public, because there are all sorts of ways in which that information can get out there. Samsung had an issue earlier in the year where developers on their side had been using ChatGPT, sharing information into the public forum. And the problem with that is that they use that to train their data models. So that information then became generally available to the public. Now, there are better instances of that now, sort of private AI instances that don't do that, but it is always a balance. You're not getting as much usability out of those models now as you were previously, but you are keeping the data safe. So I think you've got to look at that. You've also got to look at the unintentional risks of sharing personal information as well. There's a number of AI startups that are facing legal problems because they've been unintentionally sharing personal information. So there's a number of pitfalls, I'd say, but it's mainly to do with accidental or otherwise sharing of data that shouldn't be.
No, brilliant. And again, what we've been doing internally at Sharp is that we've identified this actually, it's a risk to us. We want to take advantage of the efficiencies that AI can generate to us. But again, we have to have that level of caution that says, well, if we are putting this into this learning model, it's going to learn it. And what do we not want to be shared outside of the business? So what we've been introducing, or in the process of introducing, is some AI usage policies, some responsible use in the workplace policies around the governance of AI, guides for our team on that difference between what you've touched on there is the public AI, such as ChatGPT, and the private AI, which is, as I touched on earlier on, what's coming through Microsoft Copilot slightly later this year. And using the Samsung example, there was a direct piece there that said, we want to take advantage of this. We don't really understand AI. And therefore, although we're still using it, we put our organization at risk. And there have been other really good examples of that. I think Amazon was a great one where they used ChatGPT to take minutes of their meeting, which then became public record effectively. So there are some real concerns around the use of AI. And actually, AI in itself is changing the way we deal with cybersecurity. So, Tyron, talk us through how AI is changing cybersecurity.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I mean, artificial intelligence is transforming the landscape of cybersecurity as we know it, both for the good and the bad. I mean, at the current time, it's a bit of a double-edged sword per se. I mean, as we all know, artificial intelligence as a model has been around for about 40, 50 odd years, give or take. But what's new is how we interact with it through ChatGPT, through these large language models. So what that does is it allows anyone that doesn't even know how to code or use a particular language to be able to generate either good or malicious code to be able to start interfering with and interacting with cybersecurity and trying to go around the particular measures. I mean, a recent study or multiple different studies have shown that once a malicious actor gains access into the organization, it takes them less than about 30 minutes to start moving laterally, which means going from one system to another to be able to start identifying key systems. So as you can understand, I mean, 30 minutes is not a long time. And in all fairness, as soon as artificial intelligence increases, it's only going to get quicker and faster. So from a security perspective, we're using artificial intelligence to help us faster analyze, understand, and collect risk data to make it more efficient and dynamic and help us identify these threats and mitigate them before they can do any damage within our organization. And thinking about it, I mean, one of the key tool sets that have evolved with the benefit of artificial intelligence is our endpoint detection and response. So about 3 to 5 years prior, an antivirus used to be perfect for a particular layer of security for any business, SME to enterprise. And as artificial intelligence has evolved and all the particular threat actors, we've had to, and the security companies have to evolve with it. And what they've done is they've created a tool set that utilizes the function and the features of artificial intelligence to be able to identify these behaviors rather than these static signature or these static threat signatures and help mitigate them in real time. So it helps bring a lot of better decision-making, efficiency, and allows us to respond and recover in a lot more, in a quicker time frame. However, as the sophistication of AI increases, so does the complexity of cyber threats. So cyber criminals are also using AI tools like ChatGPT, as I mentioned, to draft highly personalized phishing messages and other campaigns of malware to circumvent all these pieces of artificial intelligence that we're using. So it's a bit of a battle at the moment. And therefore, I mean, while AI brings these numerous benefits to cybersecurity, also prevents a lot of challenges that we need to address responsibly and securely.
Brilliant. So it's an ongoing game of cat and mouse, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So AI has meant the mouse can run off quicker, and actually the levels of security we need to employ need to be there to make the mouse, make the cat catch it quicker.
Correct. And you did mention the whole StarNet particular terminology, but that's where it's going to go, where AIs are fighting each other to try either get into the organization or keep them out.
That's it. The quicker you can respond, hopefully the quicker that you can stop that threat from, as you say, moving laterally and causing more damage as it goes.
Absolutely.
Lee, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I wanted to mirror the significance of the increase in the volume of attacks, and that is quite a concern across for everybody. And it is because the automation that AI can give you, the ability to target multiple targets and companies with bots, with automated learning, with attack techniques, and we're seeing an unprecedented amount of increase in those types of accounts. You know, I'd listened to a podcast the other day, and there was 20 minutes of just reeling off all the companies that had data breaches in the previous week. It was a huge amount, and they were big, significant companies. And we're seeing the sheer volume of attacks, and that's where AI can both be advantageous to the threat actors, but also to those protecting, because AI gives us the scalability, it gives us the automation. We can take those principles of defenses and we can scale them up. So it's not all of a bad news story. The other big concern, though, and this is from a sort of more from a global side, is the geopolitical stability concerns around AI and hostile nation state activity. We're seeing a lot of interaction now where misinformation is a tool of war, right? To the extent that we've seen recently with the Israel-Hamas conflict, there was a lot of misinformation going around. There was some criticism of social media platforms. One particular platform was found that the social media had around 90% of the messages that were sent were basically made up by bots. And they were bots that had been constructed by hostile nation state actors. And their entire target was basically to roll people up and create geo instability, because the more angry they could get, the more likely they could get Western involvement. And by the way, the more Western involvement there is in the Middle East, the less Western involvement there is in the UK and Russia. It might give you some indication to where who had something to gain out of that. And some of those platforms are more responsible than others. So we're going to see the ethical side come into business. You know, what are you doing in terms of responsibility? So, for instance, a company that have been working very hard is Meta. They've been incredibly busy trying to remove that misinformation. Platforms such as X, they don't even have a department that deals with that anymore. They were all made unemployed, made redundant. So how could they possibly be getting rid of those messages? There's no one to do that work. It's got to the point where it's so serious that ANISA, who are an EU regulator, just released a publication last week saying that they believe that all European elections are at risk of being exploited by AI-enabled exploitation and misinformation campaigns. And that shows you the scale that they're saying that right now, hold an election, and they're not convinced it will be fair in any way, shape, or form.
No, it's really amazing. It's allowed those threat actors to create or throw a much wider net with actually far less work to do to throw it, because the AI, the automation, the bots can do all the hard work, which even if you go back a few years was very much needed to be more targeted, because it needed more human intervention in targeting it. And again, the stat there around the sort of 90% of the misinformation coming from bots just shows you that reach in particular. It's huge. Perfect. Thank you, Lee. So that leads on to, how can I keep my organization secure as technology advances and cyber criminals evolve their strategies? Simon, what's your thoughts on this?
Thanks, Matt. So yeah, I mean, security for any business now should be at the forefront of whatever they do with their systems and their infrastructures. Whether that's when you add a system, replace something, or even change your user password, you should think of the security implications around that. Simple things, building layers of security, multiple layers of defense for your infrastructure, and these don't need to be expensive, technologies that you implement. Simple pieces that lots of businesses don't utilize, things like multi-factor authentication. Tyron mentioned EDR, absolutely, replacing your antivirus with that technology. Can be simple, or are simple things, in order to start building those layers of defense up. And every business should have a security roadmap now. So with security being at the forefront, you should have a roadmap around how you're going to evolve your environment, your security, your processes, to ensure that you've got as much resilience against falling victim to a cyber attack as possible. Of course, no one's ever going to be 100% protected. That's impossible. But with the greater levels of barriers in place, the less likely you are to get compromised. Now, to help with that, Sharp IT Services, we like to help our clients build that security roadmap, and it's a good idea to align it to a security framework. NIST is a great example of that. Given it contains 5 key pillars around identification of threats. So within that pillar, you might want to then look at security assessments to identify the shortfalls in your security. You might want to undertake something like a dark web scan of your email domains to identify any compromised accounts that may exist on the dark web. We then move on to protect, and that's sort of things like MFA, some awareness training. And of course, awareness training is so important, given previous comments around email being the #1 target for a bad actor to gain access to an infrastructure. So that awareness training is a great way to help users identify when they might be receiving malicious emails. Then we move on to the third pillar, detection or detect. And that's, again, we go to that EDR, again, what Tyron mentioned, and of course, your traditional firewalls to help detect those threats. And response, something that a lot of businesses don't necessarily have covered to a great extent at the moment, especially in the SME market, but utilizing something like a security operations center to actually evaluate security logs from all of your systems and to pull out the key concerns so that they can be further addressed. And of course, recover being the 5th pillar, ensuring we've got good backup and disaster recovery procedures, even for our cloud platforms, which we all use heavily these days. Microsoft 365, an example. It's important to have SaaS backup in place to be able to protect against those. And with all these pieces in place, you can help build a good security culture within your organization, through how you configure your environment, your devices, and actually through people, because the human element is a key weakness. So you really got to have, just to re-clarify, that good culture and that good security, good at the forefront of anything you do for your organization.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that the NIST framework, although there are lots of accreditations out there, which we'll come on and ask about in a minute, the NIST framework is a really nice and visual way so you can understand an organization based on those 5 pillars. What am I doing to protect my endpoints? What am I doing to protect my network? What am I doing to protect my cloud infrastructure? Yeah. And it's nice and simple to digest. It's not driving at technical people or technical controls all the time. It's about that, taking that layered approach to hopefully minimize that attack surface that you are presenting to the world, and we all are. And the real takeaway from this piece, from my perspective, is that, and you said it there, or said previously, that you're never going to be 100% secure. You're putting these layers in place, but going back to the cat and mouse analogy, nothing will ever be secure, because that mouse is always still going to be slightly ahead, because there are always very intelligent people out there to go, this is the latest level of security, and this is how I'm going to compromise it. So security isn't a destination. You're never going to be safe and secure 100%. You'll just lower the risk along the way, and the lower the likelihood of people getting through it. So it is a journey as opposed to a destination because of these ever-evolving threats, and we have to react when they emerge, and that's where that detect and response element really comes in, and that's where AI can be so powerful in this, to help understand, detect, or to help detect new threats and respond to them as quick as possible. And again, we can help our clients through IT roadmaps and more recently security roadmaps to help drive that positive steps forwards, but knowing it's never a destination, it's always a journey. So just as another poll before we move on, we'd like to understand really what security frameworks do you all align to. So I hope that'll appear on the screen. If there is more than one, if you just highlight the one that's probably, I'm not quite sure, sort of more recognized as an example. So pop in your options or option. Again, as an example, if you are Cyber Essentials Plus certified, that's more secure because it's independently audited compared to Cyber Essentials. So just interested to say, and just outside of this, while we're doing it, the 10 steps to cybersecurity is a NCSC framework that the UK government has effectively put into place. It's a set of 10 recommendations around what small and medium-sized businesses can do to really take that first step into cybersecurity and security, which then may lead on to getting certified Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus, for example. So again, even if you don't align to any of these, that's okay. Definitely the best place to start would be those 10 steps to cybersecurity and start working your way through the others to what's appropriate for your business. Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. So we touched on in an earlier piece, Simon mentioned about some simple things that we could be doing. It doesn't mean we need to employ expensive technologies. So I'm just going to ask the panel as a group, starting with you, Simon, in this instance, name one thing organisations can do to strengthen their defence against cyber attacks and ensure they have the best cybersecurity practices in place.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so it was on the previous screen, really, from that poll, but Cyber Essentials, or specifically Cyber Essentials Plus, is a great way. Of course, I just mentioned NIST, but starting with Cyber Essentials in that identify area to identify the shortfall of your environment through the requirements of Cyber Essentials. It's a fantastic way to then begin to start to plan how to adopt the configurations and technology configuration required in order to get your cybersecurity posture level up. It's something that's, a lot of businesses in the UK now require, for working with third parties themselves, or any business that works with government has to have Cyber Essentials. And more often than not now, we're seeing plus requirements. And I believe that's the only one that any organisation should really look to achieve. As Matt said, it's externally assessed. And without that, you can never be truly sure that the actual pass is legitimate because it's self-certified. But plus, of course, adds that external assessment to it. So, I said earlier that implementing good security layers, it doesn't have to be expensive. And by achieving Cyber Essentials, that aligns to good cost-effective ways to increase your security posture.
Brilliant. And the other piece, the nice thing about something like Cyber Essentials Plus, as a business, you can use it as a differentiator. When you're going into tenders or when you're going into competitive situations, to be able to go to your potential customers and saying, do you know what, we're independently certified and we will look after your data, is a great differentiator in the marketplace. So thank you, Simon. Tyron.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I mean, what I believe organizations can do is go back to basics. I mean, take a risk-based approach towards your organization. So understand the assets you're protecting. And when I say assets, this is your systems, your software, your devices. Have a full understanding of your entire environment. Once you do, you can start putting those layers of protection in place to be able to protect them against all these mal actors that are coming out there. And remember that all these malicious actors will look for the path of least resistance to get into your organization. So having a good understanding of what your risks are, what your assets are, and protecting them with those layers makes your organization less likely than an organization that hasn't put these frameworks, as Simon said, and all these other key features to put those baseline levels of protection within your organization. Another piece to understand what they are is there's a multitude of different assessments that you can run. You can run security assessments, vulnerability assessment, there's penetration tests, and all of these identify the key weaknesses within, well, that your organization are showing, and that these malicious actors or hackers per se are able to enter into your organization. And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, it takes less than 30 minutes for them to start doing damage within your organization and start understanding and finding that key information to start using it against you in a malicious attack, a ransomware, extortion, etc. So definitely understand what you're protecting, take a risk-based approach to it, and get the buy-in across the board to be able to start protecting it and living that security culture.
No, brilliant. I think that's the key message there, risk-based approach to it, and understanding where your risks are and putting in the appropriate measures to make sure, as proportional to your business, that you are protected. Perfect. Thank you, Tyron. Lee?
Thanks. Yeah. So agree with everything that everyone's said so far. And the piece I would add to it is to having some form of ongoing cybersecurity business review. You need to make sure that your security controls are aligned with your business objectives. So don't treat cybersecurity in isolation. It's supposed to work with your business. It's supposed to be aligned to what you're trying to do as a business and reduce risk to your business. If you don't review that over time, standards are going to change, risk is going to change, technology is going to change. Overnight, we have AI threats we didn't know about some time ago. You know, tomorrow we could be talking about quantum-based threats. You know, things move on and change. You've got to be having those reviews to have an understanding of, is what I'm doing still appropriate for what I need in terms of my business?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Lee. And yeah, it really goes back to that security isn't a destination, it's a journey. It's that continuous evolving, moving forwards discussions to understand what that threat environment looks like and keeping up with it is why those sort of reviews are really important. And for me, finally, the piece for me to add here is around that end user training and education. With 85% of breaches as a result of failure in that human layer, it's about equipping our team to understand when something's not right, so observing something's not right, and then reporting it or doing something with that observation to help protect you as an organization. So really equipping your teams to observe and report. They don't need to be cybersecurity experts to do that. They just need to understand have a level of knowledge to help them understand and then know what to do in the event something does go wrong. Perfect. Moving on. Okay. So this, Lee, I'm going to throw this one at you. So we've recently seen 2 police forces fall victim to ransomware attacks via their supply chain. What can you do to ensure this doesn't happen to you?
So a lot of this is going to be related. I mean, first off, very unfortunate scenarios, and we don't often see these things coming. And this is why they happen. These are untelegraphed attacks where you think you're okay, and then there's a supplier compromise, and you realise you've got big problems because of it. And we've seen this on larger scale as well. So I'm not sure how many of you are aware of the MGM casino compromises, where their supplier service desk was compromised and they had ransomware across their entire estate. And that was just a simple social engineering attack. So what this comes down to is that we've got to start thinking about our cybersecurity perimeter as more than just ourselves as a company. We've got to think about, what are our vendors doing? There's got to be some transparency, some visibility. You've got to start looking at creating controls or mechanisms that your vendors need to sit within. Now, security framework certifications are a very good way of doing that because they already describe some of those controls that a company might be adhering to. So simply knowing that a company is adhering to Cyber Essentials Plus means that the likelihood of them being compromised is significantly reduced. Doesn't stop it completely. As we just said, there's no 100% protection, but you're doing your due diligence. You're ensuring that somebody you're working with is less likely to be attacked. There are layers beyond that, so you can start going to other certification standards. You can start putting in particular controls that maybe you need in place. Where identity is concerned, you can say, like, you absolutely need to confirm identity with me before you start giving away access to my information, aka the MGM attack. Yeah, there are different things you can do, and some of those caveats you can create. Ultimately, though, cyber resilience is your goal. So regardless of these things are going to happen, if you have a cyber resilient approach, you can bounce back from these things relatively well. So if you've taken some of the, these principles of the 5 functions, you've segregated your data, you protected them as well as possible, you've trained people to report information when it comes, you have processes you can follow when the worst does happen, you can significantly reduce the impact. So you can't stop it from happening, but you can be a company where actually the impact is relatively low. We have lots of events where we speak to multiple people, and we speak to a lot of police forces and incidents they had, and one of the chaps I was speaking to was describing 3 companies all hit with ransomware with completely different outcomes. First company used sort of like the NIST 5 pillars, had an instant response plan, a tested plan, had a business continuity and disaster recovery plan, had training across the board, saw the ransomware message, immediately panicked, but then calmed down and said, look, let's just follow our process. And they had it all under control within 4 days. They were able to recover and carry on doing business as normal within 4 days. Another company, same scenario, had a ransomware attack. They had an instant response plan, but they just copied it from another company. Never tested it, never determined if it worked. When it came to it, none of their backups worked. So they couldn't restore any of their data. They managed to find a staff member who'd created a manual backup some 6 months ago randomly, probably breaching all sorts of other processes, but they had a backup. So they were able to carry on closing out the contracts they had currently, but they weren't able to take on any new work for several months because of this. While they just concentrated on trying to fulfill their existing commitments. Then we had another company who was talking about ransomware again, didn't believe in backups, didn't believe in cybersecurity as being an issue. They ended up going through the whole ransom demand process, ended up paying, I think, multiple times, never got their data back, eventually went out of business in 4 months. Now, they all had the same type of attack, all had the same similar scenario, but with dramatically different outcomes. And that's just from that cyber resilient approach.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Dan. And that's where the importance of those sort of independently audited certifications and accreditations comes in. So we often get third-party questionnaires asking us what we do, for example, around our backup disaster recovery. And actually what we can share is that we as a business are ISO 27001 certified, and it's our backup and disaster recovery plan is independently audited by a third party. So you could hopefully take some reassurance that as a partner to many people on this webinar, that we take that approach to security, we take that resilience approach to everything we do. The other part here is definitely the principles that were set out in the General Data Protection Regulation really apply when you're working with your supply chain. What you don't want to do is overshare with them, because they are a potential risk to you. If your customer data you're looking after it and you share it with that third party, or your employee data is shared with a third party, that is another potential way that data can become compromised. So again, practicing data minimization, putting in place the appropriate data processor agreements with those suppliers to say, actually, you can have this data, you need to protect it at a contractual level, and you can only do X, Y, and Z with it, is really important. And again, suppliers that are fully engaged in that, I want to be open with you around how we will protect your data, and this is what we do to protect it. And by the way, it's independently certified that we do that as well. That's really that belt and braces approach to the supply chain. But again, as the key message from today is, you're never going to be 100%. No organization ever will be. So it's just about putting the right layers in place. So one thing Lee touched on there was around response to incidents, cyber incidents. So Tyrone, take us through how you should respond if it does happen to you.
Yeah, Matt, thank you. there's an old saying, and it reiterates what Lee had to say, but failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And this is what it comes down to. So how do we respond to an event that happened? And Lee walked us through 3 very similar events with 3 different outcomes. And this just shows you need to get the basics right. So how do we do that in a day, or with technology, artificial intelligence, all these scary factors that are both there to protect us and also there to try and infiltrate our organizations? But it's about putting the basics in place. And it's about putting, like, for example, an incident response plan. Now, Lee touched on this, but it's incredibly important. And I'd like to focus a bit on it. Now, an incident response plan is about the processes in place that will focus on your preparation, your systems, the roles and responsibilities of each members, the key tools and processes in place. But let's take a look at it from a preparation perspective. I mean, what happens, and how many members or people that are joining us in the webinar can say that you have a plan? I mean, if you get infiltrated, what is the plan? Who do you call? Do you know how do you classify the incident? Is it critical? Does it need to be reported to the Information Commission Officer or the RCO? Because legally, if any GDPR information is leaked, it needs to be reported within 72 hours or fines can be handed out. So this is where an incident response plan comes into action, where you have all your particular key elements in place. You have staff that will be working on the process to identify, respond, and rectify and recover as per the NIST framework. But you also got team members that are able to communicate to both business and to the external client base to say, we are in this particular situation, but these are our processes. And due to running your different backup, disaster, and recovery plans, and obviously within that, you've tested your retrieval point and time objectives, and you understand how long in a worst case scenario you're going to be down. You can manage the time and the perspective so both business understands and your clients know how quickly you're going to be up and operational. So it's all those key pieces. I mean, another one is, are you insured? And if you are, what are you insured for through your cybersecurity insurance broker? And what are the numbers you phone to contact? And they normally help with incident responses, and they're able to get people in there. And as we've reiterated throughout the webinar, it is a matter of time. The longer they are in there, or the malicious actor, the more damage they're able to do, and the more backdoors and particular malicious software they're able to put into your organization. So to close off on it, I'd say is prepare, test your backups, test your backup disaster and recovery plans, have a set plan and process in place and follow it to the T. You know your backups work. Follow the backup methodologies of 3-2-1, 3 copies of your data, 2 copies in transit, and 1 offsite with an air gap. Use that. Have the right backup tools. Partner with the right people, like Sharp IT Services, that can walk you through this and talk to you about all your security needs and how the journey is, and we constantly work through it. But yes, I mean, in closing, just be prepared, have the basics right, and you should be fine.
No, brilliant. Thank you, Tyrone. The key word for me you used in there was communication. It's lovely having all the security in place, but when it does go wrong, it's about having that messaging ready, because you're going to need to talk to your team, you're going to need to talk to your customers, and you're going to need to talk to your supply chains. So having that pre-prepared means something you don't actually need to worry about at the time. You can focus on the problem, not the communication. Brilliant. So thank you, Tyrone. And then just a poll we'd like to conduct now is really the question that we've asked here, actually. Have you compiled and tested a cybersecurity incident response plan? So I'll give that a minute. Perfect. All right. Thank you very much. All right. The final question of the afternoon, and I'll push this one to you, Simon. What does the future of cybersecurity and AI look like?
Thank you, Matt. Well, that could be difficult to answer because we don't really know, but we can obviously hypothesize around it. If we kind of take a look back at a little bit of how quickly cloud technology has evolved over the years and how quickly it evolves all the time now, from one day to the next, you might find a new addition or a change or a feature within the cloud platform, such as Microsoft 365, that wasn't there yesterday. And that's obviously a far change from yesteryear, where we had traditional IT environments in-house that were pretty much static for years on end, really. AI obviously is going to be another one of those that accelerates even faster than cloud technology. And I suppose if we look at how quickly ChatGPT, or the uptake for ChatGPT was, millions of users within the first month, which took other platforms such as Facebook maybe a year to achieve. We know that AI is going to continue to accelerate so quickly. And of course, now we see Microsoft well in the game with AI, and obviously their Microsoft Copilot, which is now embedded within their cloud platforms, and more to come. So Copilot 365 is released in November, and we see some of it, such a Copilot for Bing now all around us. So lots of businesses are already legitimately using AI within their organization for the tool sets they've had for maybe years. In terms of security, we've touched on a lot this afternoon how that might be affected, but of course AI generated attacks will definitely be on the increase. We use AI for defense, such as in the tools and EDR products we touched on, but of course then that can be used to generate sophisticated attacks against those tools, and try and navigate around security tools that a business has in place in order to then infiltrate the network further. We'll probably see things like autonomous security, so kind of self-healing. So we're using AI to identify the threats, but also respond and fix those, and stop them from spreading, and actually then be able to report on it, etc. So AI will, as fast as that cat and mouse piece again, as fast as it will generate threats, hopefully where we've got the autonomous piece, it will then be able to identify and quickly stop those. There's lots of Internet of Things devices, and of course that it brings concerns potentially around what AI is built into those, and whether there's any malicious code within them. We've probably all got them around us as we sit in our chairs now, so that's something to consider. And then there's regulations and compliance around, what we do, and government will more than likely bring in stricter controls around the use of AI, generally, and of course in the workplace. And I suppose finally, skills gaps. There's a general skills shortage at the moment within security as a whole, and AI is a whole new piece, so that will more than likely continue. And I think overall AI is going to be fantastic for lots of businesses. It's going to bring efficiencies. It's going to take away some of those repetitive tasks so that people can then do more interesting, exciting things in their job role. But on the same note, we've got to really be on top of that security with all of the pieces we've discussed today to ensure that we are as best protected as we can be against new and upcoming threats that we don't even know about yet.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Simon. Lee, any final thoughts on that one?
Yeah, just to sort of add it to it, really, that AI is incredibly useful in terms of learning and pattern recognition, which are traits which really lend themselves to cybersecurity, because we're looking for patterns, we're looking for unusual behavior. There's always a word of warning that comes of this, and that is that don't ever try to completely replace the human element. We've seen this tried and failed multiple times, because what we do is we end up weighting the balance of one thing over the other too much. So AI is very good at having these automated responses, very good at the pattern recognition, very good at learning, but it still needs guidelines, it still needs guidance, it still needs to know what our objectives are, what it believes to be the correct response. There's finer layers of context to that. So I think that's probably ultimately what we're going to see, is we're going to see potentially lots of development further. So for instance, EDR uses artificial intelligence, machine learning for pattern recognition, does a very, very good job. There are other applications out there that give you indications of unusual activity, but they can be so noisy because they haven't taken into context very well. So I think we will see over time that there's going to be certain types of utilization of AI that maybe doesn't work so well, and others that really do properly accommodate for the human element and really support us as a tool. I think those are the pieces that are going to do the best.
Yeah, helping us humans is always going to be the positives and negatives of AI, I suppose. So brilliant. Thank you very much. So finally then, it's over to everyone here. We've got the Q&A section at the top of your screen. You should have a couple of questions. We've had a couple come through already, so I will pick them out and see if I can put any of our panel members on the spot. So sorry in advance to everyone, but no, good question here. I think this one's for you, Tyrone. How often would you suggest we review our organisations should review their cybersecurity arrangements?
Yeah, no problems. Thanks, Matt. I'd say that it needs to align with your business objectives. So we've spoken about your security roadmap, and inside that roadmap, the journey of what security is. There's no destination. I mean, I would say that we need to look at it as the threat actors change and as there's any evolution in it. And this is what would happen when partnering with a supplier that can help you through the security journey. But I mean, in a baseline, it just depends. I mean, it could be monthly to quarterly, but as the threat landscape changes, so should the protection that your provider offers you.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. And it's, again, you can always do too much. You can sometimes do too little. But it's, again, it has to be what you feel is right for the threat or for the risk that your business faces. And that's the real key piece to this.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you. So I've had another question comes through. Obviously, there's going to be ongoing regulation restrict how companies can utilize AI. The question is, but there are other people that work outside the law. So what steps are being taken to keep ahead of this? And I think really it feels like the answer is it's a lot around, for example, threat hunting. Lee, did you have any comments on the sort of threat hunting process?
Yeah, so threat hunting is, you're correct in saying it's all about finding the new attack methods. Now, one thing I would say is that we need to, before we get too distracted by all these tech changes and everything, we need to remember that around 80% of attacks are focused at basically duping a human. That's the goal for most attacks. It's social engineering. It's methods that have been used for hundreds of years, and then we're using technology to make that more convincing. We're using technology to make emails more convincing. So the same methods or methodologies can be used to help detect that sort of thing. So whereas there are threat actors using tool sets that are going to make a email read more convincingly, you can equally review that from trends and pattern recognition to say, we know that a fraudulent email is going to target on things like trying to make sure that there is some urgency in the request. It's going to say that there's some kind of event is happening. There might be some kind of monetary payment, and we can look for those things. That's part of pattern recognition. In the same vein, threat hunting, we are looking for new and unknown threats, so things we don't know about. So it's not the tactics that we already know about, it's the stuff that's new. It's the new ways of using the tech, the new ways of deploying it. And we have that kind of activity in security professionals, SOC services, for instance, have a threat hunting team, and we're utilizing all the data that we get from attacks, and we're going, hey, what's new? What's sticking out here that isn't something we know about? And a lot of attack techniques can be described as tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs. And typically those are reused among lots and lots of threat actors. They recycle the same methods of attacking people. So yeah, there is good work going on all the time in terms of determining what these threats are. The biggest challenge is always scaling it, and that's where the technology helps us. Scaling that effort, taking the amount of data that's involved, And that's where, yeah, ultimately AI and other technology is really gonna help us in those efforts.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lee. We've had another question. If I wanted to implement a cybersecurity framework when working with partner companies, does this include non-IT companies? And the answer is absolutely yes. If we look at the compromise that happened at the police, that wasn't an IT company that was compromised. That was an organization that printed their name badges and their warrant cards. So again, that information itself that was leaked put the police people at risk. So again, it isn't just about understanding necessarily your technology supply chain. It's about your entire supply chain and how the information you share with them, if it was put at risk, what damage that would do to you. So it's not just related to IT companies. Absolutely, you should really understand every organization you're sharing your data with and sharing any access to, for example. Another question is here, what examples of policies related to AI that need to be put into place at work in workspace? And Simon, I think that the difference between public and private AI might be a good point for you to hear to talk about.
Sorry, say that again.
Sorry, yeah, the difference between public and private AI in when you write your
policy.
Yes,
absolutely. So I think Lee touched on this slightly earlier, but of course with platforms such as ChatGPT, which we all know, anything that we feed into that can then be used by that AI engine to generate responses for other users anywhere in the world. So there's been examples of businesses putting business information into ChatGPT, and of course then that's in that world. Then you can't take it back out, and that the machine learning or the learning behind it is using that potentially to generate other responses. And essentially that's obviously a data concern. If you accidentally leak some of your important business data around that, which is of course not what you want to be doing, so you inadvertently lose data. Now, the private side is obviously where we need to go, and that's, I've kind of touched on the last question around the Microsoft Copilot, so using things like Bing for Enterprise, where it's using that kind of layer of ChatGPT, which Microsoft have invested in, but it's all held within your Microsoft tenancy. So anything that you put into that, of course, won't be used for generating responses anywhere else outside of your organization. And those are then kind of identifying some of the policies that you might want to implement as a business and enlighten your users to. So how to safely use AI, especially when you might be feeding in your own data into it that you wouldn't want any other organization to have access to.
Yeah, and it's that understanding really the difference between the two. That's the critical bit in the policy element that gives your team the tools to make an informed decision.
Yeah, it's the trust element as well of that. So there's a lot of temptation involved with some of the tools where they can do some really fancy things, some stuff that you look at and you think that would be amazing, but what is the risk exposure? What's the risk appetite? What are you actually sharing with that company? I've seen, for instance, tools that will dictate, record all of your meeting, transcribe it to you, put it into a slide deck for you. Where's that data going? Your entire meeting has just been shared with the outside world. What confidence have you got with that supplier?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sorry, just to finish off on that. I mean, Microsoft, we're at a conference with them, and I mean, they work out on 6 key principles of responsibility, and they've drawn up stringent policies around accountability, inclusiveness, reliability, safety, fairness, transparency, privacy, and security. And what they were saying is, before you try any of these tools, before you get caught up in the hype and partner with an organization that are using artificial intelligence, make sure that they have these principles in place. Make sure that with your due diligence and your privacy impact assessments, that they do subscribe to principles of artificial intelligence. Otherwise, you don't know where your data is going. You don't know who you're going to be dealing with.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. That's been an hour. It's flown by. So really wanted to thank everyone for attending today, taking time out of your day to come and listen to us all. And again, massive thank you to the panelists and the team that helped put this together. So again, if you always have any questions, feel free. We're going to send a recording out of this webinar after. But thank you all very much and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.